Reading with your kids.
Hey, so great to see you. Come on in. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We are coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are so delighted that you're part of our Reading with Your Kids family. Please be sure to subscribe to the show on the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, wherever you find your podcast. Our guest today is our Dean of all things STEM and STEAM, Jennifer Swanson, here to celebrate Beastly Bionics. Before Jennifer comes in, I want to know, are you aware that in addition to being a regular guest here on the Reading with Your Kids podcast, our Dean of all things STEM and STEAM has joined with me to create a brand new podcast that you and your kids are going to love. It's called Solve It for Kids, and it really is a lot of fun. We have interviewed the most amazing guests so far. Last week, we debuted our conversation with astronaut Katie Coleman. I've been a fan of space forever, and I finally got a chance to speak with a real live astronaut, and she was amazing. She tells us what it's like to live in space, what it's like to wash your hair in space, brush your teeth, go to the... you let your imagination run wild. It's a great show. We've had lots of scientists, engineers, artists, giving kids and their parents a peek into their lives to find out how they solve problems using creativity, curiosity, cooperation, and critical thinking. It's a wonderful show, and it will really make a difference in your kid's life, I think. Check it out. Solve It for Kids. You can find it on Spotify, Stitcher Radio, and Apple Podcasts, and also by going to the website, solveitforkids.com. Joining us on the line right now from Jacksonville in Florida. She is our Dean of all things STEM and STEAM, my partner in exploration. Please welcome back to the show, Jennifer Swanson. Jennifer, how are you?
I am doing great today, Jed. How are you?
I'm wonderful. You guys, Jennifer has been part of the Reading with Your Kids podcast since almost the start of the podcast, and we're really excited. And you also may be aware that Jennifer and I are producing a podcast called Solve It for Kids, which is absolutely incredible. Jennifer, I mean, the people that we've spoken to so far, I mean, it's just crazy. We've spoken to astronauts, Grammy-winning composers, conductors, aquanauts, amazing award-winning illustrators, the First Lady of Magic for Australia. This is crazy.
It is. And, I'm so excited because, of course, you and I have already completed a lot of tapings. So everybody doesn't know who we have coming up. Mm-hmm. But let's see. We have someone, a bat scientist.
Yes, Dr. Kristen Lear.
And we have Dr. Shaw Selby, who works with robots and is a conservation ecologist or conservation scientist.
Yeah, he made up his title.
He did.
He just said, what am I going to be? I'm a conservation scientist engineer guy. Yeah, that's it.
Right. But what he does is so cool. He creates all of these little robot packs and so forth to help the scientists when they go out into the field to explore and learn more about the forest and the healthiness of the ecosystem and all that kind of stuff. We have so many. We have another astronaut coming on. Also, we have Wendy Lawrence. Mm-hmm. She will be coming on to talk to us about let's see, how do you use dippity-doo to fix a helicopter?
Yeah. And the best thing is she explains what dippity-doo is. Because, a lot of folks out there have no idea what we're talking about.
Well, those of a certain age do. The ones that are closer to our age will understand what that is. But anyway, we are so excited about our brand new podcast. So be sure to check us out on iTunes and Spotify and Stitcher.
Yep, and by the time you hear this, it may be in a dozen or 24 more podcasting platforms. It's just crazy the way it gets picked up all over the place. And I'm really excited because you were talking about Dr. Shaw, who is creating these robots. You're back on the Reading with Your Kids podcast to talk about your brand new award-winning book, Beastly Bionics, which is all about robots that look like animals, right?
Yes. This book, Beastly Bionics, is the full title, because it'll explain it a little more if I say the full title. So Beastly Bionics, rad robots, brilliant biomimicry, and incredible inventions inspired by nature. So this book is about biomimicry, and you're like, sure, what does that mean? Right? I can see your face. You're like, okay. So biomimicry basically is the science of studying animals and nature to try and figure out how you can mimic some of what they do to help humans. So let me give you an example. Okay? So, first example, when you think of an elephant, what is the one thing that you think makes the elephant stick out from most other animals?
Besides the fact that the elephant is as big as a house?
Yes, besides that.
The trunk?
The trunk!
Yes.
Okay, so if you've ever watched an elephant, they can pick up things with their trunk, right? They can move it in all directions. It's very flexible. They can pick up tiny things. They can pick up big things. So scientists and engineers took a look at the elephant and they were like, oh, that's pretty cool. What could we use from that to create something to help humans? And what they've come up with is this big, long, reticulated arm. So reticulated means it's made a lot of little sections which allow it to bend easily. And so they've made this robotic sort of arm that can bend and pick things up from either, like, say if you're height challenged a little like me and you need something off the really tall shelf, you can use this elephant arm to pick it up and bring it down to your level. It's also great for people that might need help picking up big, heavy things or something like that.
That was one of the things that I was amazed at. You know, when I was a kid, we'd go to the zoo and the elephants would pick up peanuts or pick up grass and they'd eat it. And you go, oh, that's kind of cool. But then especially as I started performing and working with different circus performers and really looking at the circus and seeing these beautiful creatures were picking up logs and like stuff that's really, really heavy. So what a genius idea to kind of look at nature, look at what's going on in nature, look at these amazing creatures that nature created and kind of copy it.
Yes, exactly. That's what biomimicry is. You'll hear the term bionics, which is also the same sort of thing. Although for those of us that are of a certain age, we remember the $6 Million Man and the Bionic Woman. Yeah, you have to make the sound. And they were a form of bionics because they were using robot parts as enhancements to enhance their strength and so forth. So that's not exactly what this biomimicry is. To give you another example, let's see. There is the climbing robotic inchworm.
The climbing robotic inchworm.
Right. So let's think about it. Close your eyes and imagine an inchworm. So an inchworm looks sort of like a caterpillar, right? Except it can move its back legs up and it makes like this big curve with its back. And then the front legs go out and then the back legs come up and so forth. So, but it climbs. If you imagine that this would be something climbing that could climb, a robot that could climb to the top of a tree, really high tree, and maybe have sensors or a camera so that a scientist that wants to learn more about a forest or a rainforest or somewhere where they are, you can have this little tiny robot climb to the top of a tree, which is, let's face it, a lot safer than having the scientists themselves climb to the top of the tree. And you can attach all kinds of sensors. So maybe they can get pictures, maybe they can get wind measurements, temperature measurements, humidity, and all of this stuff will tell them about the health of the ecosystem that they're studying.
And it makes sense to me because when you're using robotics, then you don't have to worry about the scientist who does get to the top of the tree, takes that risk. Maybe she had a bad day. Maybe he's not feeling well. Or maybe he got distracted by something and is missing out on everything, where a robot is just up there and just collecting all the data that there is.
Right. And also, it's a weight factor. So think about it. As you go higher up in trees, if you look at the branches at the really top of the trees, a lot of them are thin and they probably couldn't hold the weight of a human being. We're talking these inchworm robots are maybe a foot and a half long, and they don't weigh a lot. Now, it's funny because if you were to look at them, you'd be like, well, that really doesn't look like an inchworm. So no. These robots don't always, they're not animatronic like what you would find at, an amusement park kind of thing. But they operate in this way. But they're helpful.
Now, I know that there's a company based here in Boston that makes crazy kind of robots that look like dogs and stuff like that. And they're really cool, and they do flips and all these other kind of things. But that's kind of like what they seem to do. They don't seem to have much purpose beyond that. But I don't know, because all I see is the highlights on the news of the dogs like flipping and jumping and stuff like that.
Well, some of those dogs, not all of them, I'm not sure if I'm talking about the ones you are, but some of them are used by the military, and they carry the heavy packs. So when the military goes into, they go out on maneuvers, and, normally the Marines or the Army people carry big, heavy packs of equipment. Mm-hmm. Now, sometimes they're putting those packs on these bionic dogs. And the dogs can carry 60, 70, 80 pounds worth of equipment where, without any effort. Whether if you put it on a human, I mean, I don't know about you, but I don't want to trek around with an 80-pound pack on my back for very long.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Hey, this just seems like a duh. It really does. It's like, you need to pick up something strong. What should we do? We should start from scratch, or should we look at nature and kind of copy what nature's already doing? But it seems like it took a long time for us to get to that. When did this idea of biomimicry kind of start?
Well, biomimicry's been around for a long, long time. In fact, if you were to look up Leonardo da Vinci's notebook, which, he was like the ultimate inventor, right? He did some sketches of birds and so forth, and then would model like planes, or, some of his sketches mimicked what he saw in birds, and the lift and the drag and all the forces that act on birds' wings as they fly. That's where he got the idea. So biomimicry's been around for a really long time. Did it always have this term? I don't know about that. The cool thing, the new advances that you're seeing now, are because in the last, 10 years or so, we have what's called soft robotics now. So, the technology has advanced so far. You used to be able to just have robotics that were big and bulky, right? And could maybe only move in one direction really slowly, like maybe up and down or to the right and left. Now, because we have nanotechnology and everything is so little tiny, you can do all of these things and you can make it flexible. For example, one of the things in here is, they're actually trying to make, robotic like manta rays.
Ooh.
To swim. And think about that. Now, if you've seen manta rays, they are so beautiful when they swim, right? They undulate and they look very fluid. So some of these soft robotics that they're working with, they're trying to create manta rays, again, that will carry sensors so that we can learn more about the ocean. But you can send them out farther, and, it's funny, we talked a little bit about this on our Solve It for Kids podcast when we interviewed Mark Patterson. But what you can do is the robotic manta ray can stay underwater a lot longer than a human being can. Mm-hmm. So you can go further and you can learn more about the ocean.
That's so cool. Now, I've seen movies where they have this little thing. It's about as big as a fly, and it has a camera. It's like a drone, but it can actually buzz into rooms and look around. Does that exist right now?
Yes,
Oh,
it does. Now, a lot of
that's
these
terrifying.
are still in the prototype. So a lot of the inventions in my book are still in the prototypes, which means that they're not fully available for people to buy. Some of them are, but there is one that I have in here that is bee. It's a bee bionics, and that's kind of what they're doing, is trying to make bionic bees. Some of them have cameras on them. Some of them, they're actually trying to figure out if there's a way to use the bionic bees to keep the pollen going, because they're worried about the bee population. So all of these things they can do on the tiny little microscopic level, or else on the big level.
That's really, really wild. What was your favorite Beastly Bionic?
Oh, I knew you were going to ask me that. Wow. There's so many different ones. Probably the most interesting section that I wasn't aware of, I'll put it this way, was that they're actually using biomimicry to help repair hearts and to create bandages that would go, like, say you have to have open heart surgery. Instead of using stitches or something, they're creating these repair things on, let's see, they're using these slug bandages. They're based on slugs. So slugs, you think of slugs and you're like, ew, right? But slugs leave a slimy film, and they also have these things that can attach. So it's a way to secure the heart or a muscle, or you can use it on the outside of your skin to close over, an open wound. And these are the type of things that they're basing it on, as slugs. Now, it's not going to have all the slimy, guppy stuff, right? It's just going to have the little tiny tentacles that attach to the skin. And that's better for you, ultimately, than having stitches.
Wow. That's crazy. Absolutely crazy. What is it if a kid is out there and a parent says, my kid loves to tinker around with stuff, and I know that my kid would love reading Beastly Bionics, and we'd love to read it together. But is there a field if a kid wants to get into creating these kind of robots and everything? What's the best thing they should do?
Well, you can do kind of almost anything. I mean, you could be a scientist in whatever field you're interested in. So if you are interested in bats, then you could learn all about bats and how they work, and then you could either teach yourself how to create bats through engineering, or you could go the other way and start out be like maybe a mechanical engineer or some type of engineer and learn how to create all of these different parts and moving parts and so forth. The coolest thing about this book, I think, is if you have kids that love maker spaces, which are really big, and I love kids that do maker spaces, but maybe aren't so interested in the coding, because the coding part is a huge part of bionics, of course. But maybe you're not interested in the coding. You're more interested in the tinkering and the creativity, and you want to build these things. Then this book is great for them, because it shows kids who like maker spaces kind of the two different sides of it, and what they can do with it. And then what I hope this book does, it inspires the kid. Go outside. Take a look around. Create your own biomimetic creature. Like, go outside and say, oh, I see a grasshopper. And watch the grasshopper and say, how does it move? How does it jump? And think about how that animal does that. How could that help humans? Would it be cool to have kind of grasshopper legs, right? So we could jump like that. Or to be able to rub your wings together or something. So that's what I want kids to do, is take this book outside and use your own imagination and design your own.
And that's one of the things you're talking about Da Vinci, and he didn't have a lot of the materials and equipment, so a lot of his ideas and inventions only exist on paper. And there's a value to that, just sitting down and coming up with this idea and drawing it out. And maybe you might not have the ability to create it now, but it's really valuable for kids to start thinking in that way and to start thinking creatively.
Yeah, well, maybe you can make it out of your building blocks, your Legos. Make it out of Legos and then try it out, or make a paper image of it and test it. Like if you're, yes, everybody's made paper airplanes, but maybe you want to make a paper bat to kind of see how bats fly through the air. So you could make it out of paper and then add a little bit of weights and see if you can get your paper bat to fly like a real bat. There's so many things you can do with this book.
I'm really psyched. Now, I mentioned earlier that folks really love this book. What are some of the things that people have said about Beastly Bionics?
Well, I'm thrilled to say that School Library Journal gave it a starred review. Woo-hoo. So, that's excellent because, sometimes, STEM books, don't always get a recognition for that. And, it was also named a top 6 pick for June for, School Library Connection. So far it's getting some really great reviews, I think, and kids, of course, are responding to it as well. So, I think if you are interested at all in finding out what's going on in your own backyard and maybe turning that into something scientific, that this might be a good book for you.
Yeah, and what a great book, especially now where, we're reopening the country slowly and in phases, and we don't know if everything's going to be reopened right away, and people aren't traveling yet, and maybe we're going to have to kind of pull back a little bit. I mean, the point is that we're still going to be spending a lot of time at home, and we're going to be spending a lot of time together. And what a great book to kind of come together and to really help us look at the world, our immediate world around us, in a really different way.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, you can, if you don't have a backyard, then just look out your window. There's animals out there. Mm-hmm. You might see squirrels. Of course, you're going to see birds. You might see, hopefully not, but maybe you see termites. Yeah. There's, maybe not a mouse or rat or two, but there's all these, or just animals in your books other books that you read. The cool thing also, Beastly Bionics is by National Geographic Kids, so it has the really cool gold square around the front, but the images in here are just unbelievable and vivid. And, it's set up so this book could be read, you could flip through each spread or each, open 2 pages is one creation. So you can read it all the way through. You can just flip through it and see what you want. But I challenge all of you guys to go out and make your own. Come up with your own design. And you can always email it to me through my website, jenniferswansonbooks.com. I would love to see some of the designs that you come up with, your own biomimetic creatures or robots. How you think you can help save the world. That would be amazing.
Yeah. Now, in creating this book, did you come up with any kind of ideas for a Beastly Bionic?
Let's see. I've been asked that before in other interviews. I mean, it's hard for me to pick one. I mean, for me, I would love to have some kind of creature that could help us clean up the ocean. Think about something like that. So I'd have to think about what kind of animal, whales who take in a whole bunch of water at one time and sift through it for, the creatures that they eat, the phytoplankton, and then they send the water back out. What if there was a way for us to do that, to kind of filter the water to get all the little plastics out? I don't know. I think that would be cool if I could come up with something like that.
That was as soon as you mentioned the ocean, that's what I was thinking, creating this big, giant whale thing that just went along and sucked up all the nasty stuff, left the good stuff behind. I think that's possible.
Yeah. I mean, and the cool thing about this is you have to think, it gets you thinking about all different kinds of science, because in order to do that, you have to think about what's going to power it. Where is your energy coming from? If it's a battery, how long does it last? How do you track it? Most importantly, how do you recover it? Because if you spend, millions or tens of thousands of dollars to create this thing and you only have one single prototype, you do not want to lose it, right? So you start thinking about all of the different aspects of science and technology and engineering to get this to come together. It's pretty creative.
Hey, one of the things as you're speaking, when I was a kid, I loved being part of a team. I loved being on a sports team. And as much as I love the sport, I really like just being part of a team. And what you're talking about is there are teams that create these things. It may have come from one imagination initially, but you need all sorts of people with great, really diverse skills to come together to create these things.
Absolutely. Yes. These are very rarely created by single-handedly. Again, like you said, one person might come up with the idea, but one person is not going to know everything about mechanical engineering and electrical engineering and the science behind it. So there's teams of many diverse people from all different backgrounds who come together to create these. And the thing is, I will tell you too, it can take years to create one of these creatures or robots, however you want to call them, but it can take it could take 10, 15 years because there's a lot of, and we've talked about this before, trial and error. Mm-hmm. Okay, we think this is gonna work, and then you let it go. Like maybe you create this whale and you let it go and it sinks to the bottom, right? Then you have to go and retrieve it and bring it back, and so, that didn't quite work. So there's many, many years of trial and error because that's what science and engineering is. It's all about figuring things out and coming up with ideas and trying them over and over.
Yeah. Well, I know that family's going to want to go out and grab a copy of Beastly Bionics. It really is a great summer read. It's a great book to read together. Great book to leave in the bathroom. I mean, those are no, really, it's great. You sit down, you're spending some time by yourself, and you can learn something. So, hey, Jennifer, remind everybody again where they can find out more about you and your great books.
Well, you can go to my website, jenniferswansonbooks.com, and you can find out about Beastly Bionics and some of the other books that I've done that I've come on the show to talk about. If you're ever interested in having me do virtual school visits, like every other author out there, I'm doing virtual school visits these days, and all that information is on my website. And then, of course, please check out Jed and I's our new podcast, SolveItForKids.com.
Awesome. We've had a great time speaking to our Dean of all things STEM and STEAM and now Beastly, Jennifer Swanson. Jennifer, thanks for being part of the show.
Thanks for having me, Jed.
Please be sure to join us for the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guest will be coming to us from the United Kingdom. Her name is Tamsin Wood. If you are the author of a great children's book, we would love to have you as a guest on the show. Being a guest, it's fun, it's easy, and it gives you the chance to tell thousands of people about your fantastic book. All you need to do is to go to our website, readingwithyourkids.com. Click on the contact button that you'll find at the bottom of the page. Let us know about your great book. We'll let you know the next easy steps. I want to thank the folks who made today's show so very wonderful. Of course, I want to start by thanking our guest, our Dean of all things STEM and STEAM, Jennifer Swanson. Also want to thank my incredible team, starting with my amazing producer, Fatima Khan, my awesome author ambassador, Peggy Cotto. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. I want to thank Augie the doggy for keeping me company here in the studio, but most of all, I want to thank you. Thank you so very much for taking the time to join us today. Thank you so much for inspiring and supporting your kids' creativity. And most of all, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.